Even though only the hardcore bunches here will start anyways, we can't wait forever still. So today I wanted to tell you something about William Shakespeare. I've heard that we were going to watch a play by Shakespeare in February somewhere. I don't know if that's still on the program with the corona and everything. We'll have to check. But still, uh, a separate introduction is in place for the guy who's called the greatest author in the English language and probably the most important theater author in general, in world literature in general. Um, let's have a brief look at his life first. William Shakespeare, I shared the screen. You probably can see this. There is Fleur. I will let her in. And off we go. So this is the most famous picture you probably already have seen, this picture of Shakespeare. It was published in his complete works, who were only published after his life. It's a very hefty volume. So during his life, the plays were not published. People didn't want to read plays at home at all. They wanted to go to the theater. That's the real thing. Just admitting some latecomers here. Admit. But this is the most famous picture because it was in his complete works. Let's move on. He was born in the 16th century, 1640, 1564. You don't have to know all these dates by heart, but please remember that he wasn't born in 1115 or in 1920 or something. 16th century England at the time of Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, who was reigning the country for about 70 years and still never got married. So that provided a period of very stable politics, and that is always required for culture to grow, if it be literature or architecture. You always have to have a prospering society, and that was thanks to Queen Elizabeth I. Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon. You probably already heard that town's name. It's a very small town in about the middle of England here. We are over there, right? As you can see, all surrounded by pastures and mostly sheep, I suppose. A very tiny town, just about the size probably of Herk maybe a bit larger than Herk Stratford-upon-Avon. Thanks to Google Maps, we can have a look. You can go there, and you should go there if you're in England and somewhere around, because it's turned into some sort of Shakespeare world. Not Disney World, but Shakespeare world. They were able to preserve some of the 16th century buildings, among them this very house in which Shakespeare was born. You can tell by the type of construction with large wooden beams and then clay put in between. Yeah. A similar house, this was the schoolhouse of Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare studied up until 14, 15 years old, probably, not any longer. The big question is, did he know Latin? Did he know Greek? Because those languages were required to read the old playwrights, the Greek playwrights, and those from the Roman period, who were always an example for playwrights. But Shakespeare didn't really go to university and probably was not fluent at these classical languages. It's a matter of discussion on how he learned that. Another point that's very important about Shakespeare is we have no information, absolutely no information on his life other than what was written down at the town hall in Stratford-upon-Avon. So we have a written proof of his birth date, not even of his birth date, the date he was baptized, his marriage, and the birth of his children, but almost nothing else. Okay, told you about the marriage. He gets married in 1582. He's 20 years old. The woman he marries is this lovely lady who's a few years older, Anne Hathaway, and they have 3 children. She bears 3 children. First, there is a daughter called Susanna, and then they have twins twins, which are a boy and a girl. And unfortunately, the boy from the twins dies at the age of 11 during his childhood still. The funny anecdote, the funny fact about that is that the son, part of the twins, the son of Shakespeare that died, was called Hamnet. Hamnet. Not Hamlet, but Hamnet. Right? We might come back if we go to this, if we go in deeper into Hamlet later on, but I'll just skim through. They marry. Anne Hathaway is the wife. And of course, Shakespeare will have to leave because he will have to go out to London to earn some money for to pay the bills. Let me just to pay the bills. So he leaves his wife and his children behind in Stratford upon Avon, and he goes down to London to seek his fortune, make some money. I've selected this little piece of a song from a play. It's from Much Ado About Nothing. And it's a short little text. It's not too hard. And this is sort of maybe what he says to his wife when he leaves. I don't know. But I'll just read it out loud. Sigh no more, ladies. Sigh no more. Zucht niet meer. Ja? Sigh no more, ladies. Sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever. 1 foot in sea and 1 on shore, to one thing constant, never. Then sigh not so, but let them go, and be you blithe and bonny, converting all your sounds of woe into hey, nonny, nonny. It's from a song. It's a short text. I'll quickly run through it to make sure everybody understands. It's Shakespeare taking the position of the 16th century woman, right? And he speaks the truth, as you can tell. He says, it's a woman talking to other women, and she explains that all men were always deceivers. So don't sigh, zucht niet. Als je man je weer al laat staan. Je wist het toch, mannen zijn altijd al bedriegers geweest. Met 1 voet in zee, of op zee, en 1 op de kant. Nooit constant gefocust op 1 ding. Then sigh not so, but let them go. And be you blithe and bonny. Blithe is an old English word that has the same root as our word in Dutch, blij. So it means happy, right? It's no longer used in English anymore. But it has the same root as blijdschap. Bonny, French loanword, is what they use for attractive, good looking. Yeah. So sigh not so, let the man go, and be happy and beautiful as you always are. And convert all your sounds of woe, your sounds of misery, your sounds of pain. Woe has the same root as the word we know in Dutch, weh, or even in German, es tut mir weh, it hurts me. It means pain. So you know how men are, women. Just be happy and beautiful and change all your cries, sounds of pain, into this nice little children's rhyme. Hey, nonny, nonny. It really doesn't mean anything. It's just a rhythmic thing. It's like a nursery rhyme. If you say it continuously, you get like a waltzing pattern, like hey, nonny, nonny, hey, nonny, nonny, hey, nonny, nonny, hey. Okay. If I should have to explain why Shakespeare became so popular and why he's often credited with being able to put himself in the place of other people, in the place of women in this case, this is the reason. Yeah. Ladies, remember the song. There will be a time in your life when you will have to sing this. Okay. But let's just move on. As Shakespeare moves on to London and leaves the wife behind with his song, he moves down south, like 40 kilometers down to London, and joins the theater, because in those days in England, around this time, theater is very, very popular. And not only with the rich people, with rich and poor, young and old, women and men, both, all of them attend the theater. And William starts out in the first few years being just, being an actor, a theater actor, right? For the first time in human history in 16th century England, we get these specially built theater houses. This one still stands. It does not still stand. It was rebuilt. It's a reconstruction of the original Shakespeare theater, and it was reconstructed in the late 1990s, and it's now open to the public to visit, but it's also used to perform Shakespearean plays. Yeah. In the Greek times, we had these big amphitheaters, right? They had specially built amphitheaters for theater, okay. But even in Roman times, there weren't really theaters built in stone. They were always put up on special podia that they put down and then took down, because they thought if we leave the theater open all year round, nobody will work. Everybody will leave their work and come to the theater. It's the television of the day. It's the internet of the day. It's a hype. People go crazy. We will look inside in a minute, but it's a round building, as we will see. And the inspiration for these round theater buildings came from something very specifically in 16th century England. You can see the round sphere here. This is bear baiting, a very disgusting sport that was very popular in England in those days. What they did is they created like a pit, an arena, put a pole in the middle, tied a bear to it, and then released a bunch of dogs to attack the bear who was chained to the pole. Disgusting. Yeah. But that's what people like to watch. It's almost like cockfights, like or dog fights with a round theater, so everybody can come watch. It was even said that the Queen Elizabeth I, a very distinguished lady, most distinguished lady of the country, liked to watch bear baiting. But it's only important in the sense that they took inspiration from this form of round theater to build the theater houses in Shakespeare's days. As you can tell, it's called the globe because there's a very important metaphor about theater that's always present in Shakespeare, the idea that the playhouse is the world. The world also is a playhouse, but that's why they also call the playhouse the world, the globe, right? In if you want to, let's look at this quote from As You Like It, one of the comedy plays. The idea behind this is, and you probably know this quote, the idea that theater is not fake, it's about real life, because real life is theater. Living the way you should is playing different roles. When you go to school, you play the role of a pupil with what you think a pupil should do. When I go to school, I try to act as a teacher. Sometimes I succeed, most of the time I don't really succeed, but still, I try to be an actor. When you go to um, to your grandma, go on a visit, you try to be the perfect grandchild. When you go for a job interview, you try to play the role of the perfect candidate. All life is playing roles. Yes. And in this quote from the play As You Like It, it's very well explained, and you can tell this is the best incantation of this metaphor. All worlds a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Yeah, they have their exits and their entrances, right? They have their exits. At one point, they die. People die. They have their entrances. They are born, right? And one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. Okay? So let's have a better look. Here's what they compare it to: the world, men and women, yeah, life and death are unmentioned. One man and one man in his time, and the 7 ages. These have all counterparts as metaphors in the theater. The world's a stage, the men and women, we are players, yeah? And we are born and die. And every man in his time plays many parts. For example, and here we have how a young man's life is considered. There are 7 ages to a man. He points them out. At first, for a boy, he is an infant, then he becomes a schoolboy, then he will be a lover, and then a soldier. Those are all different roles we have to play growing up, living our life on planet Earth, right? Here's a broad view of the Globe Theater. And as you can see, it's much different from the way we're used to watching plays. There is no real backdrop. There is no scenery. It's always the same background. That's one thing. Most importantly, here down here, you see the public standing upright. They don't have chairs at all. They're drinking beer as well. It's not really like we expect a play to be. Uh, Much of the popularity of Shakespeare's theater was also due to the fact that the entrance was quite cheap. The people down on the ground only had to pay 1 penny to get access to the theater and watch the play. Now, this was often during the day because they didn't have artificial lighting. So the theater is open. And if you're here as a groundling, yeah, you may get wet in the English rain, of course, but you still get to enjoy the play. The plays in Shakespeare's day often lasted like 2, 3 hours or more. The people down here on the ground are called groundlings, or there was also another name for them. They were also called the stinkards. The reason they were called the stinkards was, yeah, they were poor, so they didn't bathe enough, but that's not the main point. In Shakespeare's days, they had their own version of popcorn, and their version of popcorn was seafood, shells, clams, and oysters. Oysters were considered poor people's food, and that's what they snacked on during the play, right? And when they were done, they just threw the shells on the floor, on the ground. That's why archaeologists were able to discover the eating habits of people who went to Shakespeare's theater. And down here, they just eat seafood most of the time. There are more expensive seats up here where you can watch the play better, and they cost double. Yeah. And then you're at least out of the rain. Best, almost best seats in the house are, of course, on the first balcony, where you even have a better view of all the action. 3 pence was the price for that. But then there were the rich guys, the absolute nobility and very important people. They often sat right on the stage with their own chairs and cushions, so that most of the groundlings, if they were not positioned right, had to move out of the way to see part of the play. The very rich guys were sitting on the stage to the sides here. Okay. Here's another view from the side, first balcony. You can tell that the backdrop, it will always be the same. Yeah, they don't change the scenery here. That's the reason why the most important thing these actors in Shakespeare's time had was the costumes. If there is no scene behind you and you cannot change it, all imagination has to be conjured up by wearing nice costumes, right? And if you can imagine the people who were paying 1 penny just to visit the poor people here, they were dressed very much in dark brown, dull colors, while the people on the stage were wearing these beautiful gowns and dresses, very much in color. So there's a lot of distinction going on. Of course, these rich people who were sitting on the stage also wore very beautiful clothing, because going to the theater is even a theater play. Yeah, you want to show off. You want to, tu m'as vu. The idea of has everybody seen me, right? That's an important aspect of theater too. Some more close-ups, and they were quite technically advanced. They had they had this canopy, this roof above the stage, mostly to protect the expensive and valuable costumes, because that was the most important asset of the theater group, the costumes, but also to do stunts from, and to hang ropes from, to have people flying through the air, angels and spirits. And sometimes people have to get buried or disappear into the grave, and they can do so by going through this trapdoor on the stage, and you can disappear down. Also, angels have don't go down in the grave; they go up into the skies and the heavens. And there was also a trapdoor in the canopy on the roof, just to have angels disappear through there. Right. Another general view of the stage. Yes, this is Edward Kynaston, and a very important detail about Shakespeare's theater. In those days, it was absolutely prohibited to women to act in plays. It was considered not done. There were laws against this. Now, this poses a problem because many of the roles are female roles. Yeah, not much fun to have a play in which you just have men. So these female roles were always played by young boys, choir boys, whose voice hadn't dropped, just like mine hasn't dropped yet. Yeah. Until they were like 18, 16, 17 years old. As soon as their voice starts to drop, well, they can't play the women's part anymore. This changed in the late 17th century. And this is one of the last boy actors, Edward Kynaston. This makes for very interesting situations, because often in Shakespeare's comedy plays, you get some game playing going on inside the play. So hold on to your seats. This play, As You Like It, there is this girl, right? Rosalind. You can tell by the long hair. She's a girl. Rosalind. She's in love with Orlando, and Orlando is in love with Rosalind. So far, so good. No problem. Now, Rosalind isn't quite sure about Orlando's love, so she wants to test him. So, Rosalind, but mind you, this is a boy, a man playing a girl, right? Just a man in girl's clothes playing Rosalind. Now, this character, Rosalind, decides to disguise herself as a boy by the name of Ganymede. So now we have Ganymede, who is a boy actor playing a girl who's dressed up as a boy. Yeah. Because he's dressed up as a boy, this girl Phoebe falls in love with Ganymede, causing all kinds of strange situations. And because Rosalind, Ganymede is in fact Rosalind, and she's in love with Orlando, she wants to test Orlando, but can't help to still flirt with Orlando. So you have two boys flirting. You have Ganymede flirting with Orlando, even though Ganymede, in fact, is Rosalind, right? Of course, Orlando doesn't recognize Ganymede as Rosalind, and this leads to all kinds of confusing situations. Yeah. There's more going on because Phoebe is not in love with Sylvius, even though Sylvius is well in love with Phoebe. Yeah, that's not so relevant. But the fact there's a whole bunch of playing roles even inside the play. Yeah, role playing on all kinds of levels. There was quite a lot of demand to have new plays because for the first time they built these specially made theaters. So what you're gonna do? You can't play the same play for 3 weeks. There's not enough people in London to make out the public. So you have to rotate plays. What they do is they play Hamlet today, and Romeo and Juliet tomorrow, and Julius Caesar the day after that. So every day they stage a new play and then go back to the first one. So these actors in Shakespeare's days had to keep in mind, had to memorize a lot of text and a lot of plays, yeah, just to keep the system going. Because there's so much demand for plays and new stuff, Shakespeare, who was originally an actor, starts to write plays himself, immediately with tremendous success. And as you can tell by the timeline, he starts to write plays here in the 1585 about, is he produces about 2 or 3 plays a year, right? And it is not taking into account the fact that the theaters are closed at 3 points during his career due to outbreak of the bubonic plague, a pandemic, right? At these points during his career, Shakespeare goes back to Stratford and writes mostly poems. But apart from that, he's on a quite a heavy schedule up until 1612, when he delivers his last play and decides to retire back to Stratford upon Avon, even though he's only in his late 50s. He's very tired, probably. And he dies 4 years later. Here's another image of the plague situation. It started in the Middle Ages, but there were still bouts of plague in 16th and 17th century. Here's an old etching from 17th century, I believe, that shows the Globe Theatre here on the side of the Thames. And there are, beer. Here you see beer baiting. It's bear baiting. It's almost a similarly constructed building to the Playhouse. So that's where they do the beer baiting. On the other side of the river, we have Blackfriars, which is also a theater. There were a number of theaters in London at this point. In 1613, the Globe burns down, and that was not the first time. They still rebuild it, but Shakespeare's gone. He's left for Stratford upon Avon, right? And then he dies in 1616. And it takes a few more years up until 1623 before all his plays are put together in one big book and published as what we call the first folio. Folio refers to the size of the pages. It was a very big book. Yeah? The first folio with all the plays in them. But at this point, Shakespeare is already deceased. Let me just stop the share for a second. We have 8 minutes left. Let me just share something else for a second, if I can. Whiteboard, no. Desktop, where is my... Oh, let me just... No. Let me just close this for a second, go and then have my browser here. Okay, yes. Let me just... Okay. I want to look at at least one one metaphor that he uses. There are a lot of words in Shakespeare and a lot of synonyms and ways of expressing the same thing. In Hamlet, at a certain point, he uses this phrase for the meaning of to die. He uses the phrase to shuffle off one's mortal coil. Sounds very strange to you, probably. I'll explain it in a second once I get the font large enough. To die. But he says to shuffle off one's mortal coil. What does this mean? How does this work? What is he actually saying? Coil, you can translate that as kokon. You can also translate it as spool. But what the image that we have here is in fact the cocoon that is used by a caterpillar, rups, to transform into a butterfly, right? You have the caterpillar, it lives and it does nothing but eat, 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 eat. At a certain point, it builds a cocoon around itself. And then when some time has elapsed, it comes out of the cocoon, but it's no longer a caterpillar. It's a butterfly. So the cocoon is the coil. And Shakespeare calls the cocoon the mortal coil. It's the coil of your mortality. Yeah? To shuffle it off is what the butterfly does when it comes out of the cocoon. And it flies into the sky, the butterfly, right? But we're talking about dying. So to die is to throw off your cocoon that you had as a caterpillar that represents your mortality. And then you're no longer mortal. No, you're dead. Of course, you cannot die anymore. You've thrown off your mortality. What a beautiful way of saying something negative. Je sterfbare kokon afwerpen. Dat is wat er staat. Okay? Let me just go back. I wanted to have another look at one sonnet, but our time is still limited. I'll try and read it through still. Here's one of my favorite sonnets of Shakespeare's. It starts out quite gloomy and negative and dark. When, in disgrace with fortune and man's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state. When I am in disgrace with fortune, when you are in disgrace with somebody, that person doesn't like you anymore. So when good fortune doesn't like you anymore, when you're in disgrace with fortune, you only have bad luck. No good luck for you. Okay, that's the situation of the speaker. He is in disgrace with fortune, no good luck for him, only bad luck. And he's also in disgrace with man's eyes. Everybody looks at him with a strange look. Nobody likes him anymore. Yeah? Disgrace of man's eyes. Everybody who looks at me like they hate me. Well, bad situation. And I all alone beweep my outcast state. And when I cry about the fact that I'm outside of society, outside of my friends group, outside of whatever, my outcast state, I'm like an exile to the country. I'm thrown out of the country. Yeah, very bad situation. And what else does he do? And I trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries. Hij valt de dove hemel lastig met zijn bootless cries. Bootless, the meaning here is powerless, useless. The idea behind it is now you can walk around in barefooted if you are a real hippie. No problem. We all have like concrete and pavements. That was not the case in Shakespeare's days. It was only mud and sand and rocks and maybe sharp stuff underneath. If you would go out without decent boots, you would hurt yourself. You're useless. If you don't have boots, you cannot even do any work for anybody. That's why bootless has the meaning of useless. I'm almost running out of time. When we bleep away, I'll quickly come back to finish this poem, at least, if you want to hear it. Okay, He's troubling deaf heaven. He's crying at heaven uselessly. First of all, because heaven is deaf. Nobody is listening up there. En when I look on myself, when I look at myself and curse my fate, als ik mezelf bekijk en dan mijn lot vervloek, de situatie waar ik in ben, wishing me like to the one more rich in hope. Ik zit me dan te vergelijken met die anderen die zo hoopvol zijn en zo happy en zo goed de toekomst tegemoet kijken. Featured like him. I wish that I was featured like him. Ik wou dat ik op die daar leek. Who? Him. Like him with friends possessed. Ik wou dat ik op die gast leek. Die hele populaire met veel vrienden. And he's even jealous. It's all jealousy. Desiring this man's art. Hij is jaloers op die craftsman of ambachtsman die iets kan. Or that man's scope. Of op die andere die zo'n brede visie heeft. Zo intelligent is. Alles kan zien. Hij is op iedereen jaloers. And worst of all, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yeah, you know your favorite burger, your favorite meal is just a Whopper, and somebody brings a Whopper, and just push it aside. You're feeling that bad. That's the situation of the speaker. With what I most enjoy, content at least. Now, this is just a marketing scheme by Zoom by making the sessions 40 minutes. They know school lessons are 50 minutes. They just want to get money from you guys and from the schools. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Hendrik is there. Klaus is there. Ilya and Elka. Maybe I'll quickly, we'll wait for another minute and then I'll finish this discussion. If there are already any questions, please shoot. Let me know. If you have questions afterwards, please send them. Anna Banana. Okay, I'll still share. Okay, here it is again. Just 3 more minutes, probably. Anybody still waiting? No. Okay. So this is a situation of a sonnet in the first few, in the first part, the negative situation is described, and then we have the turnaround. Yet, always a change. All this is true, but still. You would think there is no hope left to get happy. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising. Yet when I think about myself in such a bad way and I hate myself, what is the solution? Happily, I think on thee. I think of you. Happily, I think of you. When I think about you, my love, I am happy. And then my state changes. Mijn toestand verandert, but there's always wordplay going on, referencing the first state he was in. First, he was in an outcast state, right? Now his state, his outcast state, changes into something else. And there's a comparison here between brackets. Like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth. Lark, leeuwerik. If you know something about birds, contrary to myself, who has to look it up on Wikipedia, you will know that lark is leeuwerik, and it's known for having a beautiful song, very specific and very melodic song. Also sings in the morning. Yeah. When he thinks about his love, his situation changes. Like this beautiful bird starting to sing in the morning when the light comes, and it arises even from the dark and sullen earth. Yeah? Everything changes with this bird. Then my state sings hymns at heaven's gate. Then I'm completely happy. I'm thinking of heaven and thinking of beautiful songs, only when he thinks about his beloved one. For die, because, the meaning of for is here because your sweet love remembered, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Because your love, thinking about your love, gives me such wealth, such richness, such happiness, that then I would hate to change my state with kings. Yeah? His state is his outcast state, has no value. But when he thinks about his beloved, he would gladly keep that state, and or he wouldn't even change it with kings, with a kingdom, a whole country, with all the wealth in the country. Right? It's a love poem. It's one of the all of these sonnets by Shakespeare are archetypal love songs and love poems always. There are a number of different sections among these poems. That's a story to itself. The first part of the sonnets are addressed to a young man. The later part are addressed to the dark lady. Very mysterious figure. We will not go into that any deeper. I won't bug you any longer. The weekend is calling out to you guys. Come and join me. Okay. I will shortly come back to this poem if you have questions next time in class. So probably Monday. I will also send a mail around to tell you which parts of the books for Dutch and English you should bring, because we cannot count on the network, I suppose. I don't want to count on the network. Yeah. So we have something to do in case St. Martinus network is en train de déconner. Voilà, c'est ça. Okay, guys, that was what I had for today. Thanks so much for joining in. All I have to say now is take care and enjoy the weekend.
Okay. Joy.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye bye.